Light Pollution News, March 2025. Follow where others are going. Today, we talk lighting and crime. Look at the importance of coalition building. And what would you say about some visually impressive light art? This month, on the show, I welcome Los Angeles dark sky advocate Spencer Soohoo, the founder of dark sky's subreddit, Jeff Shmalz, and the law enforcement veteran and educator, Art Hushen. A new episode of Light Pollution News is on its way. It's another Light Pollution News. I'm your host, Bill McGeaney. Each month, I gather on 3 guests and we go through the news of light pollution. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We do the show twice a month, cover a very wide variety of topics because light pollution is a very wide impacting issue in our society. You can find out more about Light Pollution News by heading over to our website at lightpollutionnews.com. Over there, you'll find today's script and transcript for the show. You'll also find all the links we talk about today, not to mention a variety of useful tips and a whole page dedicated to ecology news. While there, you can join our mailing list or become a supporter of the show. Hearty thank you to all of our current paid supporters out there. You really make this show possible. As a reminder, our supporters receive opportunities to join the show as a live listener with a conversation with guests following each show. Supporters also receive a modified monthly email which contain a link to the full news pool that we use to build the show each month, which can be in excess of over 100 articles, but don't worry, they're sorted by topic. If you'd like to help us continue to grow, we still have some sizable deficits we're trying to knock out this year. For only the cost of a cup of coffee, that's $3 a month, you can really help us cover many of these costs. If you like what we're doing, if you think this adds value in any way, why not say thank you by becoming a supporter? You can learn more over at our website and just click the Help Us Grow link, or you can simply click the Support the Show link in today's show notes on your Apple Podcasts or Spotify podcast player. And of course, before we begin, definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That will make this show appear in your podcast feed each and every month. Be sure to find us over on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and we also have a small but growing following on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments you'd like to shoot over about today's show, you want to have them read on the air, you can do it 2 ways. You can text it over by way of the free text link in the show notes, or you can email me, bill@lightpollutionnews.com. Let's get to it. Very glad to have you at home joining me for another Light Pollution News. Today, we are finishing out March with a very special slate of guests. With me are researcher, amateur astronomer, Spencer Soohoo, founder of Dark Sky Reddit page, Mr. Jeff Shmalz, and the crime prevention and law enforcement veteran, founder of the educational organization, National Institute of Crime Prevention, Art Hushen. Art, you start down a path to collegiate education as an adjunct professor now of University of South Florida, but you've been doing this stuff your whole career. What was the drive about environmental design that piqued your curiosity?
All right, so I got to go back on this one. And tell everybody about 1992. I was taking a class in Tampa, Florida, the junior college, and my background in law enforcement, community policing, sat under Lee Brown at the time with the storefront program in Houston, the CPOP, and just pretty active in it. And I sat in a class, that's when we talk about education, and they talked about this thing called crime prevention through environmental design. And I thought, what are they going to teach me about this? So I took it mainly to get away from work for a couple of days. And so that's why I was there. Had no intention of being sold on this initiative. After the first 2 or 3 hours, this light bulb in my head went off and said, wow, people respond to the physical environment. And lighting was one of those as well. So why not use that as a strategy to try to deter certain types of antisocial behavior, criminal activity? And then it worked so well that we began to start codifying it, from building setback to window placement to landscaping elements that went into that. And we thought that that is the best way to do it. And we see a drop in calls for police service. We see a huge increase in positive social interaction. And it all comes with just good design. And I was so sold on it, it just became my passion. And we created the first CPTED unit in the country, where we work like fire does, but with city planners to ensure these minimum design standards are met to encourage positive behavior between people. And the best deterrent to crime is people taking ownership of a space and taking responsibility for it. There's a term now we use called community self-policing, where the community police itself. We give them the tools to do that based off the design and how they interact with it.
So what does that mean? Many folks at home probably don't know enough about criminology and policing. So what does that look like? Why don't you explain
what it looks like is, for example, we want people to go outside and walk, to take advantage of that. But when we give them 2-foot sidewalks and we force them to walk on the street, they're not going to walk on the street. They'd rather stay home. So now we give them 6-foot sidewalks so they can push a stroller, engage with their kids. We give them pocket parks in neighborhood where they never had green space to go to. So now they can come together as community, interact, and get to know each other. Then we program through social activities. Let's have a potluck dinner. Let's do this. Let's have a star night where we look at the stars. We all go outside and get together. And that's the best form of community and safety is when people come together. You don't need the police like you used to. People take ownership. We add windows to look out, see what's happening. We look at workstation orientation, how we design your desk to where you face the window. We look at outdoor seating and placement. We even go as far in a park design where if I have my kids on a swing and I'm pushing them, when you're pushing your kids on the swing, I want you to look at where the public restrooms are. I want you to look at where the parking lot is. I want you to look at the basketball court. So now we're bringing surveillance. So if someone needs help, we can respond to that. If I see my friends, I can wave, hey, we're over here in the park. Come and see us and be with us. So that is what we look at, because the old days where people just stayed kind of urban fortress model, people locked themselves up inside and want to go out. It didn't do much for our communities. But now if we design and set that as a standard, then people take responsibility and you start to see fewer and fewer crimes. You don't eliminate it. But when I see crime reduction 60, 70% using these strategies, when I don't need to hire more police, that's the most effective strategy we can have.
Right. Has social media at all or any, because I know we have these apps like Neighborhood and these apps, which you're always seeing people commit crimes.
Yeah.
Has that done anything to speed up this environmental design process, I guess?
Yeah. Social media has quite a bit. It's something as simple as a Ring doorbell. Now it engages you, your phone's activated, you look at it, what's that person doing? I'm going to get on the network, let my neighbors know, hey, there's someone at my door. They're walking down the street. Well, Fred and Mary said it was at their door too. So now it's like neighborhood watch, but with technology. So now we bring the neighborhood together. We've got someone in the neighborhood. People ask the question, can I help you? And that's what it is. That's what being a community is. Can I help you? Do you need anything? Well, I'm lost. I'm looking for Fred's house. Oh, okay. Yeah, Fred lives down the street. He lives in that house. So it just brings everybody together. And social media helps a lot. It goes both ways. It helps a lot. Sometimes it's a bit of a problem, but most of the time it can really help.
Yeah, I know here we have a neighborhood community. And we have, obviously our Facebook page, but we also have a community group. It's interesting. You get to see a lot, but, so we'll get to some of the crime stuff in a second. I want to kick off this show. This is a warm-up article if I've ever come across one. And astro-tourism has actually made it when it hits Dear Abby. The title of the Dear Abby is Host Pulls the Plug on Adults-Only Night Sky Event when Brother-in-Law Adds 3 Pre-Teens to the Mix. Starry-eyed in the West, the author and 25-year amateur astronomer got themselves into a pickle when they protested their brother-in-law's inclusion of 3 granddaughters to their annual dark sky getaway. I'm not sure why they need to reach out to syndicated columnist Abigail Van Buren, who runs the well-known Dear Abby column. However, Abby agreed with Starry Eye's frustration that the girls were sprung on them at the last minute and thought that maybe they should have had more conversations beforehand. This is an interesting one. Jeff, do you have any good stories about some fun ones that have been coming through? I know you see a lot that comes through on your Reddit.
No, honestly, no. That one stands alone. And that seems, this seems more about children's ages really than anything else. And, if you guys, we all go to star parties. I assume everyone's been to star parties. And they know some kids just get bored and then they get tired and it's terrible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a kid, right? That's just being a kid. Yeah. But I mean, a 25-year amateur astronomer and someone who does an annual dark sky getaway. I don't think I would have thought I'd ever read that in a Dear Abby in my life. And here it is, right here.
Bill, I downloaded that. And if you read the headlines on it, Dear host pulls a plug in adults only night sky event. And Bill answers, you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, what are they doing at dark skies? Oh, this is bad. Because they only read the headline. They will not read the entire article. So they hear it's like, oh my gosh, we can't do that anymore. Save the kids. So it's like, and that's where the media just kind of, you got to read the whole thing.
I just find it incredible that the host would pull the plug on the party because, as an amateur astronomer does star parties, we love having kids there. Even the young ones. I mean, I've got a coworker who has a 5-year-old daughter, and she was just so engrossed by looking at the moon that you couldn't pull her away from the telescope. So it's just incredible that somebody would say, no, I'm canceling the party.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange too, because it's always more of it's like kind of like bird watching or like, ecotourism aspect to it, right? You're not serving alcohol or there's nothing adult only about it. To your point, Art.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
As an aside, we have one of our club members who actually does star parties specifically for kids with learning disorders and ADD, hyper ADD. And so he makes sure that you have a scope that can't really be destroyed and then, invites them out there for that. And so that's another, that's off topic, but that's something I think is great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I used to do star parties here. The Franklin Institute in Philadelphia used to have public funding from NASA to help them do city skies throughout the whole city. So for, underprivileged kids are able to actually be able to do that. And some of my fondest moments were being in parts of North Philly that I think you would never think to look up. And, these kids were so appreciative and they loved every second. I was only able to show them Capella and maybe one other thing because that's the window of sky I had access to. But, they were super appreciative and it was great. Well, why don't we kick today's show off with some crime stories? It's not often I'm actually able to cover these, Art. Mainly because I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to crime stories, and you do. So let's jump into it. Per CBS News, Denver police fight crime with new parking lot lighting rules. According to police, Denver has always required proper parking lot lighting. Despite this, the city has released a new best practices to reduce auto thefts, break-ins, and crime. Because as Kayla Knobs, the resource officer at Denver's police department, says, lighting is the number one way to reduce crime, even though there's prior lighting in the code that didn't do that. All right, so why don't you explain to me what's going on here and why it is the number one way to reduce crime?
Okay, we do a lot of training in Denver. We're under Colorado Post, so we were just up training in Fort Collins not too long ago, and Boulder, we're doing training there. One thing that we emphasize under lighting is that good lighting is the number one deterrent to crime. And so we emphasize that a lot. And you got to take an approach to where you place the light, the standards for that. It can be the best deterrent for crime if we already have the infrastructure there to do it or to use it. We've got everything there. We tweak the lighting out, again, with the tree canopy. So it can be that tool, and it can be a deterrent to crime if it's done the way it should be done. I kind of like her statement. I read that too. And I know a lot of the officers there were probably kind of like, okay, well, this is our public spokesperson. This isn't the one that's in the field doing this every day. And that's come up quite a bit too. But it's a great tool to use because it's readily available to us. We can work on it very quickly. People see it, and every city wants to say they're taking strides to come up with a solution. And for a lot of cities, it's just add more lighting is that solution. And Denver's no different than what I see in Seattle and some of the other cities as well that emphasize this, New York as well. But it's just how it's used. It's like any tool. If you don't know how to use it, what are you going to hurt as part of it when you try to use that tool? And that becomes a concern.
That lighting, when you say good lighting, what are we specifically talking about there?
Good lighting, we get into distribution pattern. We get into uniformity level. We get into full candles or lux. We get into color rendering. We get into Kelvin temperature. Again, those are all things you have to consider. And when it's done well, and we kind of talk, if it's done well, it's a really effective tool to use along with the social programs. So again, then we get into sidewalk width, and we get into how we activate the space for positive social interaction. And that lighting could encourage people to come out and use that parking lot where they might not have used it before. they feel comfortable now parking there where before they left it and put their car somewhere else. So it's just that balance again as we look at that. But you got to work closely with government to make sure they understand, what type of lighting is. Not all lighting, because we talked about LED before, not all LED lighting is good, but many of the public don't know that, and a lot of city officials don't know that either.
So I guess I'm curious about how light affects some crime, because I know here, smash and grabs, they happen usually daytime, all the time in like park areas, right? Like usually you park your car, someone comes along, smashes, takes whatever's in there, and then moves on. That see that all the time. What is reduced in lighting?
What is reduced is lack of what we call positive activity. So if I don't have good lighting, I'm not going to have a lot of good positive or social interaction, because people, I don't want to say follow the light, they follow where other people are going. So if I have more people along a walkway or corridor, more people in a green space, I'll have more and more people using that space. And that makes it harder for the offender to be successful. In many cases, they don't want to be observed. They don't want people to pay attention to them. They want to transition through with no one really looking at them. And sometimes darkness might allow that. Lack of social interaction might allow that as well. It's just blending all of those components together and knowing who to go to. A study that came out from John Jay College not too long ago, we talk about bringing in a variety of groups of social services. They found that for every additional 5 to 10 nonprofits the city includes as part of their renovation or renewal, there's up to as much as a 10% reduction in the homicide rate. We didn't hire more police for that. We reached out to more services. We reached out to nonprofits to help us. And a lot of cities don't see the value of that. So again, when you have more services available, we see less criminal activity. But it's just getting the government to say, we need to do this instead of flooding it like we saw in other cities with light to deter crime. There's a kinder way, a more humane way to do it. It's just not blasting them with light.
What I was curious about, because I see plenty of crimes during the day. I've been victim of crime in a very busy area during the day. And I'm personally not sold that light prevents crime, because if it doesn't do it in daytime, why would it do it in nighttime?
By itself, what was the other topic that came up not too long ago? When we started getting into this camera push, CCTV, we bring in these cameras, it's going to deter crime. That was a big point for selling cameras. Did it? It didn't. How you use the cameras, what strategy you have to support that, what's your scheme with that? It's the same with lighting. How do you use the lighting? What's your scheme? What's your goal? How are you going to accomplish that? And I try to compare those two so people see we've had this belief before, for if I do this one thing, I've had principals in schools tell me if I get cameras in, I can drop a lot of my fights in the hallway. I can eliminate these things that are occurring. And we're like, no, it's not going to happen. You're going to capture it, but it's not going to get rid of it. So again, how do you support your camera program? How do you support your lighting initiative? Those are all important.
Yeah. And case in point, we have view into a park here, and there's one guy who goes through at 5 a.m. and we know it's him because he has a headlamp and there's no light in the park. And he puts graffiti on some of the poles. We'll go in and paint over it. And the next day we'll see him in the morning with his headlamp out there doing it again. And so nothing is changing, right? So you add an article to this list months of articles, The Pull from the Atlantic. I saw it come through. I don't know if I spoke about it on the show. Turn Down the Lights from Eric Scigliano over at the Atlantic. Why don't you talk about this one?
Yeah. And again, we've done a lot of training in Seattle there for the corporation, the city, Seattle Police Department. What I liked was that the author brought a personal story into that. And that's why I was attracted to the story. He said, hey, I heard what you're doing in Seattle. Here's my story. I want to run this. What do you think? And I thought it was a great idea. And I like it because I know some of the neighborhoods. We've been there. And we talk about how certain parts of the city have no light but no crime. Well, again, we have to look at the social component. We look at home ownership. We look at jobs. We look at activities there. So I'm not going to have a lot of crime in those neighborhoods. So again, they don't have a lot of lighting. I don't want to get into gentrification, those other things, but at least we start to see that. Also, kind of going into this is that we don't need more light. We just need better light. We need more quality light, lighting where you need it. And I like that he was able to respond to that and go, I agree. We just need to light where we have crime, where we have this type of behavior. But then to have the flexibility within the infrastructure to do that. maybe dimming the lights by 50% or 75%. Maybe looking at new technology to address that as well. If I have a lot of crime where I've got someone painting the poles, again with graffiti, where are the police? That's what infuriates me. Where's the police? Why aren't they involved with that?
I'm going to keep my mouth shut on that one.
You believe I'm going to agree with you because I got my car broken into Sacramento and I did everything I was supposed to do. Everything. I parked my car in front of the outdoor seating. I had a projector in the back, right on a busy street. People were looking at my car. I go, that's perfect. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. They still smashed the window because on the license plate, it showed it was a permit for example, a vehicle used for a rental car. So they knew I'm not going to come back and testify. They knew that if they break into the car. So they only targeted cars with that plate, even though I parked in the space I was supposed to be safe. So what message do we send? And that's part of government changing the plates. Florida did the same thing. A lot of people were being carjacked. They changed the plates back to regular plates, and we saw that drop. We saw a decrease in that type of crime. So again, those little things we don't think about makes a huge difference.
Well, here in my neck of the woods, I have these two items. I'll be honest. You're going to sway me, but I'll be honest. It's very hard not to be cynical about the latter piece, but we'll talk about it in a second. Philadelphia has witnessed a historic drop in homicides. Since its all-time high in 2021 at 562, 2024's numbers have come down to 268, 142 fewer victims. To understand the gravity of those numbers, we have to go back to 2013 to 2014, where we saw lower homicide counts. Shootings fell from an all-time high through 2022 at 2,331 to roughly half of that at 1,081 last year. Again, numbers on par with around 2014. So it's been a while since we've seen those numbers. At the same time, the city of Philadelphia has rolled out new LED streetlights. The Crime Justice Lab team over at the University of Pennsylvania, led by Aaron Chalfin, looks to deliver their initial assessment later this year. Chalfin's most notable work, I think, has been that Chicago Crime Lab's New York Omnipresence study, which you have cited in the last show, are reducing crime through environmental design with 36% point crime reduction and a 4% overall reduction in violent crimes. The street lighting conversation here in Philly was rolled out with the explicit goal of public safety and the assumption that brighter lights would cut down gun violence. So before we continue, it wasn't enough that the lights were already in place. It wasn't enough that street brightness had increased continually since 1900, but the assumption was that they had to be even brighter to cut down on gun violence. The study that the University of Pennsylvania is doing is a joint effort with the Urban Affairs Coalition and is at the very least looking to connect lighting to a feeling of safety and social cohesion, for which art, and you've mentioned before, and this stuff is longstanding sufficient documentation correlating lighting to feelings of safety and helping to provide social cohesion. The bigger question, I think, is whether lighting reduces gun violence. And given the data from the Philadelphia Inquirer article that I pull a lot of information from here, I'm going to speculate that they'll draw an inverse correlation between streetlight upgrades and specifically daylighting of select neighborhoods and gun violence. And the Inquirer cites that in 2024, gun violence, including robberies, was down more than a third, and arrests in violent crimes were up. I get what Chalfin's trying to prove, and I get the allure of low-cost impact solution. How do you attribute that to streetlights?
I like the article, too. And to put it solely on streetlights, they talked about some grassroots initiatives that was going on at the time as well. Maybe some neighborhoods were stronger in that, some weren't. Some were more receptive. They talked about a lot of the offenders actually shooting each other, so no more competition in the gang war, which, again, people died as a result of that, which regardless, you hate to see that. It's just really frustrating because they don't consider the community makeup, the role they played, parents that were involved with this, that participated. The selling point, it's easy to explain, is we have brighter lights. That's why crime stopped. No, because there's so many grassroots programs that the public's unaware of. And it was even mentioned in the article, a variety of grassroots projects. They didn't really build off of those. Lighting, again, did they tie that in with sound tracker technology for gunshot tracker? So again, which really helps, the police coming there with gunshot trackers, the lights are there, they can see more of that. And then you tie in Philadelphia's street camera system that ties into law enforcement, that helped them to identify more offenders. They didn't go into that either. So there's just so many things that we missed, but just to come back and say lighting by itself, and there is no silver bullet. we all want that, but I want to really get into the details of it. The demographics, again, housing, again, employment opportunities. Do we have an influx of more social programs to engage the community? There's so many nonprofits that have a huge impact on neighborhoods. Now, while they're putting up the lights, nonprofits working there, and they've already established themselves in the community as some of the leaders going into that. And let's give the credit to the lights. No, what about the people knocking on doors every day to help? And they don't get that credit. So again, it's just this going back and forth with what the cities want to promote as a success story to what actually the people in the street every day are doing to get that done. So that's the issue sometimes that we have.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. A lot of components here. In 2013, 2014, I was in the city, and I will say we had a great Mayor Nutter at the time, and they did a lot of community coordination and to work with community and really reduce crime, and it was an impressive, feat of what they did. And the light, they didn't change the lights at all between 2005 to 2015. It wasn't we're not switching over, adding new lights and trying to daylight neighborhoods when they did that. They did it through community organization.
Hard work.
Yep.
It's hard work to fix it. It's really hard work. I'll give an example of Buffalo is another great city. We've done the trading with Buffalo in the past, and their gun violence initiative under the CPTED program, they had reduction of 46%. They didn't improve the lighting. They just applied the CPTED components and strategies, grassroots approach, working with community members how to do that, and to have that large of a drop in crime, gun violence, and no one addressed the street lighting. So you see one city saying hard work. Again, in two major cities, Philadelphia and Buffalo. So again, how do we describe that in such a way that other political leaders can see that and go, I'm going to copy Buffalo, because what they did was amazing. In Philadelphia, they decrease as well across the board, but I think a realistic approach that grassroots to working within the community. And like I say, it's hard work. It's hard work.
Yeah. There's also a reverberating consequences of trying to praise the streetlights for everything. A part of that is a lot of private businesses you'll see will set up super bright stadium lighting in their parking lots. And they'll just throw up really close, very ultra bright, to the point that it probably causes eye damage, honestly, if you go there day in and day out. What it does is it reinstills this myth. I feel like so often light is, I don't know, if it's talked about as the boogeyman, and if we just turn on light, everything will disappear. Our public officials, here in this city, our public officials will speak about light like that. Is that it? Should I be lighting underneath my bed? Is that what I should be doing?
And the fear, again, and I'm not getting too far off track, but I did a dark sky webinar last year, and they started asking, well, when does crime occur? And why are people afraid? And when you start looking at the numbers, you see about a 62%, 64% increase in violent crime, home invasion, homicide during the evening hours, during darkness. And that's the fear. That's the fear that takes over. Now, they're not looking at the neighborhood where this is happening or lots of calls for service. They're just throwing those general numbers out. And people that don't have crime, what happens? Perception. Wow, that's going to happen here. I need to light up my street and light up my house. But the data shows something different. And I try to tell the dark sky advocates, that's why so many people are motivated, because violent crime, property crime, we can fix it. That's no big deal. We got insurance. I'll repaint my mailbox. I'll buy my kid a new bike. But you see, when they come in through that front door, or you see someone shot in a neighborhood park, that's where that fear takes over.
Or I can't help but think about something I recently saw. That's actually in a news piece that I saw the other day, where they're trying to track down someone who ran out and shot someone around. It's probably sometime in the night. A very well lit, very bright street. Went over and shot someone in a car. And I find that a lot of these stories I come across that have similar sad storylines like this, what the people do is they just put a mask on. And that seems it's a $5 solution to, what light's supposed to prevent, isn't it?
Yeah, you can have state-of-the-art technology, but again, if they conceal themselves, the public thinks we have facial recognition on every camera the police department owns. No, they don't. We have the ability to search a database through Interpol, to pull records out right away and identify an offender through an earlobe identification. We don't have that.
Enhance.
And so, and again, there's ways to get around it too. Nothing beats just having just people taking ownership, and we can't stop all crime, and we all can agree on. We know we can't stop it all, but we can make it harder for that offender to be successful.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, it's, as you said, more holistic and less scapegoating and trying to tie your political aspirations to, a magical device.
Well, that's a very good way to put it. That's a holistic approach. That's a good way to put it.
I'm going to finish out the crime piece here with two things. First, I'll note the University of Pennsylvania Crime Lab's study has the following list on its website. And this, again, it just feels very much like they are trying to prop up lighting here and not looking for an objective solution. Whereby New York study Crime Lab's team wrote, has long been thought that the street lighting could impact crime, and yet little rigorous evidence existed to support this contention. The New York one will add to our knowledge connecting street lighting to violence reduction and has implications for other cities that are looking for place-based investments that can help curb the epidemic levels of gun violence. I'll just leave that there. Let's close our conversation on lighting and crime by mentioning this study. This is interesting. Art, I like this one. Journal of Virtual Reality found that a decrease in natural luminance leads to an increased fear of crime, especially shortly after sunset. Okay, not odd. But the piece that was really interesting was that it found that interior lighting played a role in comforting people in the night. So interior lighting, if you're walking down the street and a house had its, say, like living room light or something like that, it played a role in comforting people as they walk down the street.
Yeah, I can see that because they think someone's at home if they call for help. They see an office space looks active. They feel there's someone inside that can respond to help them if they call for help. So it's just that if I go down a dark street, let's say a commercial property or a business district, and not any light is on, you throw in some recessed hallways to enter the building, and I'm walking on that sidewalk, I am going into every nook and cranny, someone behind that corner or someone in that hallway. When I have lighting on the inside of that, then it eliminates that, and I feel more comfortable walking down the street. And that's from us conducting user interviews with people that live in the neighborhoods. They're like, yeah, I kind of like it when this is on because people sleep in here at night in this hallway. Now they put that light on, nobody sleeps there anymore. And the person's just sleeping, not doing anything wrong. I've been sleeping there, but that fear perception starts to take over.
Well, I'm going to wake the other two guys up now. So
okay.
They've been enjoying their little siesta here.
No more crime. Here we go.
Are you turning on the lights now?
Oh, man. Jeff, you might get banned. All right. I've stumbled across many news stories regarding astrotourism in India, and this is the first one that's really ripe. We've got another ripe topic, I think, to discuss. As astrotourism increases, the Indian Institute of Astrophysics will train librarians and supervisors in rural India to learn all about the sky, including what to see, why they're seeing it, and how to convey that to people of all ages. The article comes from the New India Express, goes on to mention this infatuation with experiencing a natural night as people make 2 to 3 days long trips to rural communities to see this. The goal is to help those communities maximize the opportunity to help people explore the night sky. And in a separate piece from Skift, an astrotourism guide company named Starscapes partnered with local development board and reportedly saw over 600 people in attendance over a 4-part astrotourism event series. Jeff, have you seen like an increase in Indian-related stuff on your Reddit?
Not necessarily India, but I have seen an increase in astrotourism demands. I know India has just sort of launched their first dark sky reserve just a couple of years ago, and they're certainly looking to expand those horizons. What I noticed a lot is rural communities looking for a new revenue stream, and they tend to generate towards something simple like skies because they can bring in the money. The challenge becomes when someone else comes in that might challenge those dark skies with money, and whether they hold up the desire to share dark skies or whether they'll give over to the industry of light pollution.
Yeah. Well, since you mention it, in a world of culture and policy, which is where we're starting now in this part of the show, this is a big win for nature. The oil and gas company Franklin Mountain Energy became the first recognized company via the new oil and gas industry lighting program through Dark Sky International. This program showcased 2 site retrofittings and a dark sky certified third location to obtain what co-founder Franklin Mountain Energy Audrey Robertson called a win-win solution for balancing safety while protecting the night sky. The success of the program derived from a coalition of stakeholders in the Dark for the Park Alliance, which included a very lengthy list of Carlsbad Caverns National Park, Chaco Culture National Heritage Park, New Mexico Oil and Gas Association and Bureau of Land Management, New Mexico State Land Office, McDonald Observatory, Apache Point Observatory, Dark Sky International, and Dark Sky New Mexico. This simple win helps Franklin Mountain Energy divert attention away from apparently continued clean air standards violations, according to one source. And I don't think they'll have to worry much more about those in the coming years, but maybe that's a story for a different day. Spencer, you have to work with coalitions in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
How does that work? Why don't you tell us a little bit about how it is building those coalitions? I think this is a lot of dark sky groups and advocates, I think, have the most difficulty at this point.
I mean, building coalitions it's difficult. I mean, the only lasting coalition we've built is with Dark Sky International. You know, like we tried partnering with Climate Reality, and then they had their own hot buttons that they're working on. Like, you know, they're more concerned about microplastics in the environment than they are dark skies. And so that collaboration sort of fell by the wayside after the 6 months of meetings with them. We also worked with Center for Biological Diversity. We worked with them early on. We got a petition going. They're really interested in dark skies and, you know, from an environmental viewpoint in terms of energy conservation, things like that. But they had their own focus, and so that alliance didn't last too long. I mean, we're still sending them updates and things like that. And then Travis Longcore, who's with the Audubon Society, he's a UCLA professor who's done a lot of work on the impact of light pollution on birds. So we've actually worked with him early on when we were having discussions with LA County, but then he's got his own focus and the Audubon Society has their own focus. So basically, it's been very hard to build a coalition other than with Dark Sky International. But then I think, you know, it's not for lack of trying, you know.
Yeah. Does Audubon do Lights Out in LA?
There is a Lights Out in LA. Yeah. I don't know if it's sponsored specifically by the Audubon Society or not.
Yeah, here Audubon is the one who I think initially backed it, but it's a coalition group of many stakeholders that try and do. It's a very, again, to your point, it's a very laborious exercise where they have to go out and contact these building and harass building managers essentially to have them turn off the lights and buy into essentially the program.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things Dark Sky LA County is trying to do is that to promote awareness is that they're actually trying to get light pollution meters, or, you know, SQM meters, sky quality meters, in the hands of people, and do sort of like a citizen science thing where they'll set up a website and people can report their quality of the sky. One of the things that's been bothering me is that, so we'll work with the county, we'll get legislation changed and things like that, but how do we quantify whether or not there's been an impact?
Yeah, that data is very important.
There's no good data on that. And, you know, you can use remote sensing observations, but then there's some limitations there. And so once somebody suggested flying drones over some areas, well, or airplanes, that gets expensive and that's not practical. So, you know, there's got to be another way of quantifying the impact that you're having.
I wholly agree. That is a very hard part to do it. I want to move us forward here a little bit because we just spoke about building the coalition, right? On the other side of the world, down in Chile, it's a totally different tale that's emerging. Unlike New Mexico, the U.S. company, AES, is planning to build a hydrogen and ammonia plant on 3,000 hectares of Atacama Desert. The plants would be processing an estimated 730,000 tons of ammonia per year, and the plans involve construction of a solar and wind array involved in the plant operations. And then the groundbreaking is slated to begin in 2027 with a completion date of 2032. The concern from the European Southern Observatory is that the end result of this construction will have a permanent impact on research. The plant facility sits just 5 kilometers from the Very Large Telescope, which could mean serious impediments for these super sensitive instruments. For you at home not aware of the Very Large Telescope, it's a 4 telescope array of 8.2 meter mirrors sitting at Cerro Paranal, Chile. Per the ESO director, Javier Barcon, in Science, even if the AES does a perfect job using perfect lights that probably don't even exist yet, with perfect shielding, there will be an impact that will be significant. And added to that frustration for perhaps all parties is that Chilean representatives have found themselves beginning to take, as Jeff, you're saying, a pro-energy or a pro-science stance. Chile has aggressively pursued renewable energy, including a 2023 green hydrogen action plan that enables the country to export hydrogen. So even the big guys have problems with when a new kid moves in with a bigger setup.
You know, I read several stories on this topic, and I find it fascinating. One of the more interesting parts of it, I think, is the first story I read about it, called it an energy mega project. And then later on, I've seen other stories that are come more pro the building of this factory, and they call it a renewable energy project. And so it's a use of language to sort of justify. And what it splits us, as you said, between pro energy and pro science.
We're running out of space. That's really what it comes down to.
That's the problem, right? Because it's not a new story, right? Because 100 years ago, the Royal Observatory in London, couldn't record anything anymore because it got too bright. And cities all around the world had all the old observatories that they couldn't use anymore. They had to move them out into more dark areas, and now those dark areas are now getting industrialized as well, and we're running out of space, like you said.
Yeah, maybe I guess the floating barges find a way to get it out there.
There is a petition that's being circulated for people who want to protest that.
Yeah, why don't you send it over and I'll include it in the show notes and so listeners can grab it. That's going to be a story to look out for in 2025, without a doubt. Before we depart from the theme of coalition building, though, I have this article from down in the heart of Texas, as friend of the show, Betty Buckley, likes to say. Coalition is the name of the game down in the Hill Country. The Hill Country Alliance awarded their Night Sky Preservation Fund to a number of organizations. The fund is dedicated to supporting goals of providing a healthy nighttime ecosystem for all. The fund is backed by grants from Chicago-based Koipa Foundation, a nonprofit trust that generates income largely off of investments. This year's recipients included 9 awardees, including the Blanco County Friends of Night Sky, the Comar County Friends of Night Sky, Gillespie County, Jones County Night Sky Advocacy, Keep It Real Beautiful, and Keep It Real Friends of Night Sky, the Northwest Historical Homeowners Association, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The fund is used for night sky quality monitoring, to your point, Spencer, and fixture upgrades for dark sky compliance. I think this is probably the hardest piece of the puzzle, right, Spence? At the end of the day, to get anyone into compliance or to buy into, having a healthy night is cost prohibitive, right? At least initially. One of the ways to solve it, you have to find a way to get the cash to those individuals.
Well, it doesn't have to be cost prohibitive. I mean, to quote Travis Longcourt, light pollution is the simplest thing to control. Just turn off the switch.
Yeah. But we can talk to Art about that too.
No, don't pull me into this.
No. Yeah.
Well, lack of proper incentives is a difficult piece.
That's why one of the things that we've been advocating, is you don't have to go out and buy a new light fixture right now, but when the thing breaks, then you're going to incur a cost. So if a light bulb goes out, it's not going to cost you anymore to get a lower color temperature light bulb. So there are a lot of simple things that one can do to make the sky a little more friendlier.
Right. But if you get too low a temperature, you're not going to be able to incinerate the criminal as they come through your land. Or maybe just a deer. I don't know. So we're not too far from the end of the show, but before we get there, I want to give everyone a chance to plug themselves. And Spence, how can people learn more about your activities in Los Angeles? How can they learn more about what you guys are doing if they're interested in joining, or how can they learn more about what's going on out there?
Okay, well, we have a video that LA County produced. It's about a 10 or 15-minute video, which does a very good job of highlighting the problem of light pollution in Los Angeles County. And it interviews all the various stakeholders, from amateur astronomers to Native Americans, environmentalists, and so on. So I think, but that video is actually linked on our website, www.laas.org. So it's right at the beginning of the website. And you can join the LAAS, or you can join Dark Sky International's Los Angeles chapter. And I think those are two good starting points.
And Spencer, you guys have the added challenge that Los Angeles has really unique streetlights. You guys have historically artistic streetlights.
That's a bone of contention with Griffith Park Observatory. There are a lot of historic streetlights, and some of them can be retrofitted and some cannot. So some of the lights at the observatory, for example, up at the top, right around the observatory, they put shields on the top of those lights so they're not blasting 360 degrees. But the color temperature could be warmer. But then if you go down the hill, there's still street lights which are blasting, they're historic lights and they're blasting 360 degrees out.
Of course.
And so you sort of run into this game where, okay, well, it's not really observatory, it's recreation and parks. And then, so, trying to get people's attention to take a look at that is a challenge.
Oh, man. All right. Art, how can people learn more about what you do, and where can they find you, and how can they fly down to USF and hang out with you for a semester?
What we do, we're the National Institute of Crime Prevention. We provide the CPTED training, which includes a large lighting component. We train architects, urban designers, law enforcement, security, nonprofits to work with communities and work with the different cities to apply these strategies and show how to write the standards and codes for that too. So that's the training component. We also have an association, the United States CPTED Association. We just presented in San Diego last week. We had a good turnout. San Diego Dark Sky chapter presented on what they were doing in the region to support dark sky. So again, we bring in a variety of professionals to share their experiences. And what the common goal is creating a safe environment. And so that's that association. So the NICP, to take a look for us, we're under the NICP.com, the National Institute of Crime Prevention.com. And the other one is the US CPTED or USCPTED.com. And then I encourage everybody to join. We're like-minded. We share the experiences. We're involved with dark skies. We're involved with IES. So it's a fun group to get involved with.
Excellent. Jeff, all right. Where do people head out to Reddit? Why don't you give us the best Reddit plug you got?
Yeah, right. I can give you the address. It's reddit.com/r/dark sky. We describe it as the place for finding, sharing, and preserving the dark skies. I would describe it's not just light pollution. It's every sort of topic about dark skies. If you're a dark sky enthusiast, I think everyone's got their own little topic. There's a place that I really like to find the story about, and we tend to do them all. So you'll find some things you haven't seen before and things you have.
Great. And is it just you moderating, or do you have a team over there?
Right now, it's just me. We are reaching out for more people, but...
So there you go. If you're using it and you're looking to help moderate, the job that everyone thanks you for, I'm sure.
I don't want to jinx it, but it's really easy. No one ever causes a problem.
That's great. Great to hear. It's a really great Reddit. And first, let's finish out tonight with a couple of things. First, designations that maybe some of you weren't aware of, and an interesting piece on light art to close out the show. First, and I hope you're not sick of this word, if you haven't figured it out yet, collaboration is the name of the game. And through the combined effort of the Swansea Council, the Welsh Government, Natural Resources Wales, and the Gower Society, Dark Sky Advocates, and the local environmental groups, the Wales Gower Peninsula has been designated as an international dark sky community. And according to Forbes, this is one of the last remaining areas in South Wales with dark skies. So good luck to them. Congratulations. Next, nighttime lighting of sports fields are a perpetual source of community conflict. Let me tell you that. And I'm sure Jeff can definitely relay that one. But they shouldn't be. Were you aware, as I was not aware, that there's a dark sky approved sports lighting program through Dark Sky International, started in 2023, where they only had 3 certified fields. It expanded 5-fold in 2024 to include 15 U.S. sites. Speaking as someone who reads the news each month, Jeff, I think you can agree. Field lighting is just a constant neighborhood battle and feels like a no-brainer solution. I've seen some really good field lights, and I don't understand why anyone will put up bad ones. There's some really good ones.
Well, it's the reason why they're leaving it on. I think we have to talk about it as well. Some of these things, I read a story that I posted on Reddit was about an English Premier League team that leaves their stadium lights all night long, only just to have the grass grow because it's too cloudy at night. So they're using the lights, and that affects everyone in the neighborhood, everyone around. for miles and or kilometers, I should say, it can be really frustrating for people.
That's true, and I guarantee you they're not using good lighting. I've never seen a stadium with good lighting. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But I've seen, especially around here, I've seen a nice big soccer area. Nice, that's some traditional football, I guess you would say, out there in just not far from us that have some phenomenal fixtures, and it's a good setup. They do a good job with it. So it's not odd. When we go down to Florida, your state down there, Art, Pensacola, they have some nice spots down there with some good lighting. It's not the norm, but it's not odd either. So hopefully one day we'll get there. Let's close out this month with something really interesting. And I'm curious about your all's take on this one. Light displays are often given a title of art in the winter months, usually without any artistic validation beyond the fact that it's just bright and a light. However, John Ong, a Malaysian artist, has been blending LED bars into astonishing visual epics. Currently, he is debuting a piece of an outside exhibit called Halo. The exhibit sits in the confines of a building that formerly was a Buddhist temple in Taiwan, the Shi Dibai Pavilion. In keeping with Buddhist concept of light as a metaphor for enlightenment, the exhibit utilizes light bars to project individual light beams in a visual experience that can best be described as tricking the eye into believing that the light is actually floating midair towards you. What do you guys think of this one?
I want to see it. That sounds very cool. Neat experience.
Yeah.
You had me what you said was enclosed. So enclosed. Well, that would be fun to take a look at.
It's not fully enclosed. It's more like a pagoda, I guess.
It's in an urban environment.
Yeah, it's in an urban environment. It's definitely not a natural environment. It's an urban environment.
It always brings up the question, I think, and maybe it's come up, I know before on your podcast, it's how far can art go against public needs and public desires? How much is this light actually helping and how much is light hurting?
I agree. The question is how bright and how visible is it from afar?
I'll say this, to your point, I think it is visually, the pictures I see here, it's really well thought out, and it really looks like a visual experience. And you know what? It's not like something we see with, say, some unnamed places in San Francisco where, you'll have people light up the whole park or have laser beams going across Market Street, stuff like that. This actually looks like it's trying to be art. Now, hey, the merits of it, is light pollution or not, I'll leave that for you at home to debate. But it is very interesting. Definitely check out that link because it's curious. It's cool. It's curious. I want to thank my guests today, the educator, law enforcement veteran, Art Hushen, Redditor, Dark Skies founder, Jeff Shmalz, and researcher and amateur astronomer, Spencer Soohoo. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I want to thank you at home for staying with us today, as you can learn more about today's show by visiting a link over on the show description. As a reminder, you can reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and more, or simply via text in the show notes. You can also email me, bill@lightpollutionnews.com. This show was recorded on February 16th, 2025. I'm your host, Bill McGeaney, reminding you to only shine the light where it's needed. Have a great March.